Hello and welcome to Casual Buddhism. We're so happy to have you here this evening. We have a special guest, Kimberly Brown. And as usual, we're joined with Venerable Dhammananda Pikani, Thailand's first fully ordained Theravada nun, who I might add has just celebrated 20 years of ordination. And there was a big event in Bangkok, so we're very happy for her. A bit about Kimberly. Kimberly Brown leads meditation classes and retreats that emphasize the power of compassion and kindness to reconnect us to ourselves and others. She studies in both the Tibetan and Insight schools of Buddhism and is a certified mindfulness instructor. She just recently, I believe it's been published, your recent book by Prometheus Books. It's called Navigating Grief and Loss, 25 Buddhist Practices to Keep Your Heart Open to Yourself and Others. And we were just talking about grief and loss last week, Kimberly, so this is timely. We can continue our discussion. Please go ahead and I invite you to speak if you would like to at this time.
Thank you. Well, Cindy, first of all, thank you for coordinating this and hosting this lovely program. And Venerable, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm really glad to be able to connect in this way with you.
Yes.
So my question today is regarding grief, as Cindy mentioned, and it's in particular about complicated grief. I'll give an example. About 10 years ago, my mom died. We did not have a very good relationship. And after she died, it was more complicated in the sense that I couldn't feel like, oh, she died, we'd had a lovely relationship and I can mourn that. It was complicated by feelings of guilt, by feelings anger, and it took me a lot of, had to ask for a lot of help. I went on retreat and had a lot of support to find my way through that time. And since I've learned, many people struggle in this way sometimes after someone dies. So I was wondering, Venerable, if you have any advice or suggestions for people who find themselves in this situation.
Yes, there's just one particular case came to my mind. It may not be exactly the same thing as what you have experienced, but I think her case is also equally complicated. She grew up in a family with a father who was very crude. Every evening when he came home, the two daughters, including this, supposedly I will call her Mary and her sister would be hiding under the table, as soon as the father got home. And he would be using harsh words, beating up his wife, and these two daughters were just hiding under the table with fear. And he was very abusive. And this went on for years. But then I don't know the reason. The daughters also did not know the reason. Suddenly, the father disappeared, didn't come home. He didn't come home. So, to their relief, the daughters were happy that they didn't have to face this evening shouting and yelling and beating up their mother. So, then they grew up with only the mother. And they felt fine, only with the mother. And then when they grew up, educated, the mother could send them to universities. And then suddenly, after maybe something like 20 years, the father came back. And this time, very soon, it was discovered that he actually had cancer, kind of last stage cancer. When he found that, he exclaimed, "Oh, how could this thing happen to me? I had always been nice to people." So the daughters and his ex-wife were just looking at each other, knowing fully well that he was so miserable to them, So eventually he became bedridden. And it is only, by this time, Mary already became a Buddhist. she became a Buddhist, and she understood, she went to take care of this old man, her father. But for her, it's it's not the duty of a daughter to a son, to a father, but it is only a duty to another human being. But she was, if every day she would go and visit him, and at that time, they were already giving him morphine because the pain was so immense. But then one day he told the nurse not to give him morphine because he wanted to talk to his daughter. And when Mary came, he didn't have any strength to speak to her, but she could read his lips, and he said, "I love you." I get goose pimple when I tell this story, because this man, he never felt this love throughout his life. And the fact that he could actually say, "I love you," to his daughter was something of a great change. And the daughter felt immense change in her heart. The father eventually, after a couple of days, died in the arms of Mary, in the arms of his daughter. Then Mary, by that time, he gave the funeral just like Buddhist style. And then she was studying psychology. So what she did, she went back to study her father's life, why this man was like this, to find that he was growing up as two sons. He was a younger one, and when he was 4 years old, he went to school with his elder brother, and the elder brother was about 6 years old. And this brother got killed in an accident walking to school. And the mother was screaming, "Why didn't it happen to you? Why must it happen to the elder son, the one she loved more than him?" So she was yelling, scolding, screaming at him all the time. So this young boy grew up with that kind of relationship. He never experienced love from his own mother. He never experienced love throughout his life. So therefore, when he got married, he started beating up his wife, scolding the children. That was normal for him, because that was the only way that he ever experienced. So when he came to the last stage, when he actually could open up his heart to feel the love of his own daughter, and the fact that he could actually say, "I love you," was a great change for this man. So Mary was uplifted. She completely forgave her father, and all the tidying up in her side, that in her inside, that was so a big bundle of unhappiness, a big bundle of anger, a big bundle of disappointment, whatever, suddenly fell down. So that was a true spiritual practice for Mary. And she told this story in a conference. People who were in the workshop with her, they all fell silent. And I would say all of us actually cried when we heard her story. And to me, I had similar experience with my own mother. And it was a healing for me. Her story, when she was telling that story, it already also helped me to come through with the suffering that I had with my mother. For my mother was expecting a son, and I was born, so that was a big disappointment for her. So I had to struggle through my relationship with my mother, because she wanted a son, and I was her disappointment. So, Mary's story actually uplifted my own. And no matter how we see that things may be so complicated, it always have the root. It comes from somewhere. That person is not like that if he had the same nurturing like us. So in Buddhist teaching, whatever happened, there is a cause behind it. This cause and effect explains. and can explain all the relationships, all the things that happen inside us, around us. And understanding this true nature of things according to the Dharma that the Buddha guided us, we kind of now you can let go. You know, this word let go sounds very simple, but it is very difficult, very difficult when it comes to practice. So we just let go of this negative energy, let go of this defilement that had been inside us, hurting us, harming us along these years. You know, we are the one who understood the teaching of the Buddha better than others. We are the one who should break this cycle of, vicious cycle of things that we see in society. Yes.
Thank you, Dhammananda. That's a beautiful story. Perhaps in talking about letting go of grief, do you have any suggestions for particular practices or rituals? Here in the United States, people really kind of, we've really forgotten how important and powerful it can be to have rituals. And I'm wondering maybe if you have suggestions on that.
Yes. We have also cases of people who have had abortion. Out there, you know, in society, these young women that we meet them, we don't know how many of them actually had to go through difficulties of abortion. So towards the end of the year, December 31st, sometimes we arrange for making offering to the spirits who were not born, to the babies who were not born. And we buy things, you know, beautiful baskets, you know, to offer to the newborn babies at the hospital. And I was surprised, you know, many people were very interested in this activity. And some of them actually confess that they themselves had abortion. And some of these women, some of them very, very high in social level. To me, as a monastic, they felt safe. They felt safe to tell the truth. But it means a lot for them to be able to open up and bow down, to make offering to their own babies that they had to disconnect with them. So this ceremony of offering, making offering, and to say that I am sorry that you were born with me, yet I could not keep you. It is very moving, because, you know, it is also in our practice now. You know, when we feel so good with someone, you know, we would go and make marriage, and they said, oh, will we be born together again and again, like that. You know, we make kind of promise. And when actually this baby was born with you, and then you had to abort her, the babies feel that you didn't keep your promise. You told me that we will be born like mother and daughter. And how come when I am born with you, I came particularly to be born with you as my mother, how come you didn't allow me to be born, you know? So this feeling between the babies and the mother were actually revived with the mother coming forward to ask for forgiveness. Some of these women had abortion for 20 years, you know, the last 20 years. Imagine that this guilt inside her keep coming back to her throughout all these 20 years. You know, she felt that she was wrong, but she didn't have better choice to do it. So that's why she chose abortion. And when we are able to actually make offering to and invite the babies who had been aborted to come and listen to your mother, that this is how your mother accepted that she had done wrong to you. You know, the fact that you accept that I have done wrong to you, I think this is a big spiritual upliftment, and it had helped many women. So we try to do it as often as possible, but usually we do it on the 31st, the end of the year. It is this guilt, the fact that we know that we have done something wrong, it has been with us. If we have conscience, it is buried in our unconscious mind, subconscious mind. It goes very deep. And when your meditation is very deep rooted, some of these surge up, and we need to recognize this guilt feeling buried deep within us. And yet we have to find the rituals, to allow this guilt feeling to take place, to display this guilt in a respectful way, in a respectful manner. Rituals become important here. Rituals become very important and become very supportive of the person who is actually asking for forgiveness.
I think that's a very important question that you're asking, Kimberly. And I was reminded of a friend who recently lost her daughter who died on the street. And I was very moved this Christmas because she knew that her daughter really always liked to be curled up in a blanket. And so it came to her. Sometimes I think people need to find their own rituals, which isn't so easy in this society. But she bought blankets and took it to the homeless.
Yeah.
And that became, well, I really was moved by that, because I think when we can do something that enables us to give back and make an offering, as Venerable said, it helps restore our sense of closure, or I'm not sure how to resolve some of those complicated feelings, but it helps kind of work through them. I don't know what you think about that.
Yes, very good. Some of the very good projects, actually came out of cases like this. The parents actually find ways to help. They have lost their own children, but others should not lose their children. So, they begin projects which are helping others.
And I was really moved in your bio too, Kimberly. It says, you lead classes and retreats that emphasize the power of compassion and kindness to reconnect. I thought that was really interesting that you used the word reconnect. I think, I don't know if you wanted to say something about that, but it feels related to what we're talking about here, because I think people need to reconnect with themselves once they've gone through a major loss, especially when it's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I think what has been maybe the most valuable thing that I learned when I started studying Buddhism is that all of us have these qualities, joy and love and compassion and wisdom. It's just that they're obscured, and that we can develop them. We can all reconnect. And that has been and continues to be kind of the most powerful teaching. We can use these practices to already, to develop what's already there, instead of feel like, oh, we don't have enough. So that word reconnect is meaningful, I think, in that way. And you're right, at least for me, when I went through that with my mom, the part of my practice and healing was to bring a lot of compassion to myself and to her, because as Dhammananda mentioned, of course, she had a very troubled life and it was very hard for her. So a lot of the healing came about through that sense of compassion for both of us.
Yes.
Well, this feels like a beautiful circle. to come back to. And I thank you so much for being here. And I wish you all success with your recent book. And thank you for joining us. And thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.
And we will wish everyone again a Happy New Year and see you next week.
Yes.